Hey everyone, I'm Jay, and in this exercise we're going to be prompting the user for some input, and then we're going to take that input and stick it into an output message using some of the methods that we learned in our previous lab exercise. So let's get started. First we'll have a look at what our requirements are. We're going to create our standard file with some comments at the top. We have 4 inputs that we're going to retrieve from the user. We want their name as a string, their age as an integer, their favorite color as a string, and then a number as an integer. I have an example output right here of all the text that you want to put in these particular messages. Right? So you don't have to come up with a message. They're right here. Do them exactly like that. Okay. Immediately following each one, we're going to output a message to them using that very same input that they typed in. So if I put in J as my name, then you're going to output, hello Jay, nice to meet you. And so you're going to use that variable in there. Same way we did in our previous exercise, our previous lab, where we output strings of text and we put those variables in there. That's what we're going to do here, except that those variables in this one are now coming from the user. So every time you run this, it's going to ask the user, hey, what's this? Hey, what's this? And it's going to take that input and then manipulate it. All right? So let's have a look at my completed code, which I have right here, and we'll go through each line. Okay, so I have my comments on the top, just my standard document explanation, my name, class, what lab this is, and a brief description of the lab. Okay. Next, I'm declaring variables, and I'm doing something pretty important here. I'm giving them basically some kind of null starting value. I'm not putting my actual name as the starting value for the input. What I don't want to do is cause any kind of default values to be accepted outputs. This is a fairly simple lab exercise, but in a much more complicated program, if your starting variables actually are something that can be used in the future, and they're going to cause your program to kind of unsuccessfully pass, right? Your starting variables are going to pass as good input. That's going to cause you to miss some bugs later on. Okay, so you want to make sure that your default values are something that if those default values don't get overridden by user input for any reason, or if they get overridden incorrectly or something, you want to make sure that these default values don't cause you to think your program works great when in fact it doesn't. Okay, so my default values are blank. Blank is something you want to put in there. I don't want to put, sometimes you'll see, oh, I'll put XXX as this, and then if I ever see XXX come out later, I know it's a bug. Well, that's not a great thing to do because I might not be the one to see it. Somebody else might see it. So we want to do something that if somebody else sees it, they go, oh, okay, it doesn't work. And they're not just going to see me put like, oh, Tony Stark is in here, and then somebody sees it and they're going to go, what the heck is this? Right? So we want to use blank. This is an empty string, so I put my quotation marks. This makes sure that this variable is a string, but it doesn't give it a value. Okay, the next one is I'm giving it 0. Now, in the future, we'll talk about some better values to use, perhaps than 0, but for now, we're just going to say 0. Nobody's age is 0, at least nobody who could run this program. So that's a safe default value. The number, I'm defaulting to 0. That's actually outside of our choices. As you'll see down here, I'm asking the user to input between 1 and 9. However, we don't have any kind of method in here, any kind of mechanism to make sure they actually put some number between 1 and 9. So they could put 22 in here, nothing stops them. It's going to run fine. It's going to work exactly as it normally would. Right? It's not going to cause a bug in this program, but it would in some other program. Same thing for color. We're going to ask them what their favorite color is, and they could type in dolphin, and nothing's going to stop them. Okay? But there's my initial declaration of my variables, gave them all a starting value that's basically a null default value. Okay? Now moving on to the next part, where I'm going to, for each value, I'm going to get an input and I'm going to output. Now, I know previously I said get all your inputs and then do all your outputs. However, these messages are to the user. Hey, what's your name? User gives me their name. I say, hello, whatever your name is. Nice to meet you. So you have to say that up front. You have to do one of these at a time. Okay? So the way we write this, we're going to use a built-in function that comes, it's built into Python. You don't have to make this function. It already exists. It's called the input function. Okay, so we're going to say our variable name input is equal to this input function. And what does this input function do? You give it a message. It displays that message to the user, and then it waits for the user to type something. Okay, they type something, they hit enter, and then whatever they typed gets assigned. This is the equal sign, that's the assignment operator, right? So whatever gets typed by the user gets assigned to this variable. Now, it could be the case that I ask for a string and the user types a number, or I ask for a number and the user types a string. That can cause problems. We're not worried about that yet. Okay, we're just doing input. We'll worry about, type mismatching and error handling later on. Okay, for now, we're just going to assume that the users know what they're doing. For now, I'm the user. Hopefully I know what I'm doing. I think I do. All right, so this is my message. Now, don't forget to include a little extra space at the end of your message. And the reason for that is when this gets displayed to the user and it starts asking them for input, they're going to input at the very end of that message. And if you don't put a space, they're going to start typing right up against, in my case, right up against this question mark. If I didn't have a space here, and it's just going to look very wrong to them. So it'll include a space, okay? And then it'll be a little bit easier for the user to read that, and they'll just feel more comfortable. Okay, we want to make things as easy as possible for the users. Okay, it's it's common practice that you need to write your code with the expectation that your user is a complete idiot. Most of your users are not, but some are, and if you want your program to be useful, you have to make sure that users who have no idea what they're doing can still operate your program, okay? Because especially the first time somebody ever uses your program, even if they're super smart and they've used lots of other programs, they've never used yours before, and so you have to hold their hand all the time, okay? Once they get comfortable with it, everybody's going to be a pro eventually, but the first time anybody uses your program, they have no idea what it is. And for example, if you don't use the same text that I have assigned here when you're doing it, when I'm grading your assignment, that's going to be my first time looking at your program. And if there's anything different than I'm expecting, I'm not going to, I'm going to get a little bit confused. I'm going to go, oh, what's going on here? And even though I know exactly what I'm expecting, if it's anything different, that's going to prompt a bit of surprise for me. Okay, so make sure it's the same, and make sure for this assignment it's the same. Make sure in the future you make your prompts and your messages and any kind of user interaction, make it as easy as possible, because your users, the first time they use your program, they're going to be complete idiots. They don't know anything about your program. They've never used it before, right? And you have to expect that, okay? So that's the first message, and then immediately I'm going to output it, and I'm using one of my output methods from our previous lab. Okay, so I have my string and my curly braces, and then I'm formatting to insert this name variable into those curly braces. Right? And then I just have this plus empty string at the end here as a holdover from our previous assignment, and to remind you that even though we have this formatted string, we could still add other strings to it, and we could format those strings as well if we wanted to. It's not one thing that we can put in here. We can use the plus for concatenation and include many strings if we ever wanted to, okay? And we can format, if you remember, we can format multiple variables as well. However, we're only doing one at a time. So first message, what is your name? And then we output hello, name, whatever they inputted, gets formatted into here. Nice to meet you. I didn't put a space here. We don't need one at the end of that message. Next time we do an input, this one's a little bit different because it's an age, that's an integer. The input, when it gets input from the user, all the user input is strings of characters because they're typing into the keyboard. The Python doesn't necessarily know it's a number, so I'm going to force it to be a number with this typecast. I'm going to cast it as an integer. Okay, we learned about that in the previous lab. I'm going to cast it as an integer and make sure that there's no mismatch on that one. Okay, now if somebody does type in something odd, then you will get an error, maybe. Right? You'll have to test that out for yourself. I'm not going to test everything in this video, but you will be able to see that. Okay. So as soon as we get that input, we're going to output whatever their age is. We're going to say, congrats on, here's your age, trips around the sun. And presumably, if somebody is 20, they have been around the sun 20 times. And put the age input in there, and I have this holdover again from before. Okay, strictly speaking, if I have a lot of these in a program, they may add up and slow things down, so I wouldn't want to do this. I'm just including it as a reminder to you that that is a possibility. All right, next one is another number, and we're asking the user pick a number between 1 and 9, and I put a colon here with the space as sort of a user prompt. Usually when you ask somebody to input something, you put that colon in there. Previous ones were questions, direct questions. So I put the question mark. This one is a statement. They need to pick a number between 1 and 9. They're going to put in that number. We don't have any error handling here, so they could put any number they wanted. Same thing for how old are you. They could put 10,000 and there's no error handling. Okay, so once they put in that number, the next output is going to say, great, whatever number that is a good choice. And the format is going to put that number into the place of these curly braces. And the last one, we're going to do their color input. Ask them what's their favorite color. Now, this one is a little bit, you're going to watch out for this one. You may have seen I'm using single quotes on all my inputs before. Right, single quotes here, single quotes on this one, and now all of a sudden I'm using double quotes. You can use either one. You can use double quotes the whole time, but notice what's your favorite color. I actually have a single quote inside my text, which means that I cannot use a single quote as my thing, because as my outer string, remember, right? Because if I did, this would be a string. Notice the color change right here. This is no longer a string. This is just code that doesn't work. Okay, so I'm going to use double quotes, and that way I can contain a single quote within them. Okay, so once I get my color input, that's going to be a string. I'm going to say, wow, whatever color they said is a wonderful color choice. And then I'm going to format that and output it. So let's see this run. All right, I'm going to run this. What is your name? So you have that space right there, and then my cursor. So my name is Jay. Hello, Jay. Nice to meet you. How old are you? Currently 41. Congrats on 41 trips around the sun. Pick a number between 1 and 9. Now, as a test, I'm going to give it a number below 1 and 9, and I'm going to call it -2 and input that. All right, great. -2 is a good choice. Okay, we have no error handling. Right, we're not doing that yet. We'll do that much later on. Okay. And then lastly, what's your favorite color? And my favorite color, well, let's do another error, right? My favorite color is going to be, let's go with, let's do Pluto, the thing that's not quite a planet. Wow, Pluto is a wonderful color choice, right? So there's no error handling, okay? We're just putting stuff in, right? We might have some error handling if we put in a value that didn't equal a number on these integer ones. I'll leave that one for you to test on your own and see what happens. Okay, but for now, this is our lab module 3, lab 7, 3.7, and we're doing user inputs, and we're outputting those as some more practice from our previous modules, so we're adding to each step as we go along. Okay, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.